defense rests, let's lay it down. Gonna dig deep, wave that verdict round. The defense rests, time to analyze. With the evidence, we'll unveil the crime. Justice served in an honest fight, true crime tales till the verdict's right. Solving more than just trivial quests, where sentences rule at the defense rests.
Hello all, and welcome to the Defence Rests. Excuse me. Where justice is served in an honest fight. So, today I'm here just to clear up some misconceptions to do with the Karen Reid motions hearing. Excuse me, sorry. So, a big shout out firstly to Lawyer You Know, who helped explain a lot of things for me. So without further ado, let's bring
prove or disprove.
Bring him to the stage. He's a bit excited, obviously. Okay, let's go.
Prejudicial, and it does not necessarily prove or disprove a material fact in the case. Now, I get that all of us are like, well, it is a huge difference. And I mean, I'll be the first to say what a big deal it is that the FBI or the experts hired by the FBI actually produced this information. And frankly, that's why I don't understand why the Commonwealth even is continuing going forward with this case. But that does matter. That does matter, that it would definitely have a prejudicial effect to the Commonwealth. And what does it actually prove in Karen Reid's case? I know what you guys are going to say it proves, but that's how the court looks at it. Why wouldn't she allow Alan a chance to be heard? Again, you're going to hate me for this. Oh, Turtle Boy, I see we have a question started by him, so maybe he'll hate me for this. I think Judge Canoe was trying to do the right thing to allow Jackson and everybody else to go back, get their ducks in a row, because now we have a much bigger issue on our hand, and she wanted to allow him time to respond. I don't love that. I wouldn't want that if I was the lawyer. If you want my honest opinion, I'd like to hash out as much of it as we can now, because that is the big issue here. That is the big issue here. And John Scott said, invoice is the biggest issue to me. Now need the invoice date, but without response from defense yet. All I have is questions. Exactly. We need to pause and withhold any final judgments until the defense.
I do apologise. I actually recorded this on 1.25 speed, and Peter speaks extremely fast as it is. So I'm trying to slow it down, but bear with me.
Response, because how many times in this case, both sides, does the other side say, they only gave you half the truth, let me fill in the dots? So let's hear what the defense actually has to say about this stuff. It could all be hogwash. It could all not be exactly as it seems right now. Turtle Boy said being paid and being reimbursed for expenses are totally different things. Here's what I will tell you. I'm just going by, in my opinion, what I believe the rules say about disclosures. And if you pay for expenses for experts, you need to disclose that. And the other side can ask questions about that to show bias, because, and I will just say, there have been some lawyers that are not so ethical and experts that are not so ethical, where the expenses get really high in lieu of no expert fees to make it seem like you're not paying them, but you are, so that lawyers, and I have done this, can say $30,000 in expenses they paid you. You're allowed to ask those questions just like that. And if the jury says, I don't know if I can hold this expert as being very credible because of the amount of money they were given. And absolutely the defense can say, but you didn't have any fees. This was just expenses. And absolutely that can be something that the defense comes back out and says, they're not biased. These are just expenses. Rebecca said, and Alan Jackson isn't stupid. Not stupid, but probably choosing his words carefully. And again, feel free to disagree with me, as I'm sure a lot of you will, with how I look at if you pay $23,900 in expenses. I think that is and should always be discoverable.
What I like about Peter is that he is very non-biased. He says it like it is, and basically doesn't particularly take sides at all. He just shares the facts, points them out.
Duncan said, do you not see a problem with the clearly uneven scrutiny with the defense versus the Commonwealth? Like, now she's gravely concerned, only just now seems like bias. I do see some of that. I hate it. I think it should be treated equally. Actually, I think, frankly, the defense should be given more credence than the prosecution, but I am going to call it even for both sides. And I have the whole time. I've said the Commonwealth has screwed up plenty. All right. Bev shakes in anger over potential defense violation. However, cool as a cucumber over Brady violations, failure to preserve evidence, evidence after trial, misleading evidence, pound rocks, Bev. I don't understand how he can cry about a Rule 14 violation then when the deadline hasn't passed. Well, if they haven't turned it over for months and months, the defense has done the same thing with certain things, right? It's like, I asked you for this. You never turned it over. Now you're turning it over late here. That is the big issue here. And John,
don't worry, we are going to get into the substance of it. I'm just laying a bit of foundation, and I've skipped a heap.
Carefully, and again, feel free to disagree with me, as I'm sure a lot of you will, with how I look at if you paid $23,900 in expenses. In my opinion, is not going to be that they're going to remove the ARCA experts over this personally, just personally. Okay. We are back to Brennan, I think, for another minute or two before we get after Judge Canoe leaves.
All right, so let's. Oh, I actually did have something to share, but I'll see if I can find it. So basically, Brennan is has put forward a motion to dismiss, to exclude the ARCA witnesses from testifying in the next trial. Now, obviously, he can't go and attack their credibility because they're impeccable. So what do? We find the needle in the haystack, or the apparent smoking gun. Now, as far as I'm concerned, Hank's been brought in as like the cleaner in Pulp Fiction. So he's here to do a job and to try and reinstate the Commonwealth's credibility. Don't think he's doing a good job of it just this yet. But let's see. So I have a copy of the said Commonwealth motion to exclude the employees of ARCA in testifying in this trial coming up. So basically, it goes through to say that the ARCA, I may as well read it. The Commonwealth moves to exclude the defendant from calling employees at ARCA, including but not limited to Daniel Wolfe and Andrew Rinchler, due to the defendant's failure and inability to comply with discovery obligations under Section 4, Rule 14. Revealed during the defendant's first trial, Dr. Wolfe and Rinchler were two experts retained by the government, the federal government, in furthermore of the US Attorney's investigation of an unspecified federal crime. Right, so therein is your first bit of information. A, they weren't employed by the defence and they weren't employed by the Commonwealth. They were employed by the federal government doing an investigation into the US District Attorney's Office. Okay, so let's not forget why they're there. Now, there are accusations out there that these witnesses were coached or were told what to say. Now, this federal investigation and the subsequent report that came out of that investigation was done prior to the trial. So once the federal government contacted both the defence and the Commonwealth, stating that they had information with regards to this particular case, they alerted them as to whom they should contact. Now, for obvious reasons, the Commonwealth didn't contact them, but the defence did, and called them as witnesses. And the Brennan is now claiming that there was emails and correspondence between the ARCA witnesses and Alan Jackson that was either inappropriate or coached or whatever. Now, and he's also saying that these emails were not handed over as part of discovery, but they were handed over from the federal agency. He had to reach out to the feds to get these emails. Continue reading. The parameters of the experts' opinions were not provided by the defendant prior to the first trial. Well, that's because they really didn't know. Either side didn't know what was going on and what lengths these people had gone to in their report. Of the trial, and portions of the experts' opinions were not expected. Oh, I can't read it, it's way too small. Let's see if I can do it that way. The parameters of the experts' opinions were not provided by the defendant prior to the first trial, and portions of the experts' opinions were not expected nor properly noticed. Furthermore, during the first trial, Dr. Wolf and Dr. Rentschler testified to reviewing information that was not known prior to rendering their opinions, and this was not previously disclosed to the Commonwealth. Well, they only reviewed the documents that were provided in discovery. Okay? Yeah, so both sides had them. And you've had a chance now, Mr. Brennan. You've watched the first trial. You know what their opinions are. You've read their reports, and you know what parameters they have. And they did not answer anything different to what was discussed in the emails, which was basically Mr. Jackson reaching out, asking for a bit of an overview on how the process went. You know, they are independent physics engineers, and yeah. So let's go to the next page. To allow the defendant ample time to retain her own experts and to prevent any delays in the April 25 trial date, on December the 5th, the Commonwealth renewed its request for discovery. I can read that. Something 13. Areas of discoverable materials related to the ARCA from the defendant. On January 6th, the Commonwealth notified the court and the defendant of its intention to move to exclude the ARCA witnesses, based on the defendant's repeated failure and inability to comply with Rule 14. I'm glad you know that rule very well, Mr. Brennan, because you seem to be not complying with it multiple times. Sally Port, perhaps? To date, the defendant has filed no response nor produced any additional discovery. On February 6th, 2025, Attorney Jackson indicated to the Commonwealth and this court that he intends to call the experts from ARCA, presumably Dr. Wolf and Rentschler, at the defendant's upcoming trial. On December 4th, the Commonwealth filed a written request for discovery material from the US Attorney's Office pursuant to that. On the 30th of January, the Commonwealth and Defence received a response from the US Attorney's Office citing certain federal statutes and regulations that restrict the complete discovery the Commonwealth is entitled to. Peculiarly, despite the formal 4-page letter received on January 30th, following the parties' appearance before this court on February 6th, the Commonwealth and Defence received an email from the US Attorney's Office stating that their contact with ARCA ended on July 31st, 2024, and should either party wish to engage the ARCA witnesses for additional analysis, any further engagements must not infringe on any federal privileges. Okay, Rule 14 demands reciprocal and expert discovery. At the proponent of the evidence, the defendant bears the full obligation of Rule 14. Provides for an automatic exchange of discovery. What's that, Mr. Brennan? Automatic exchange of discovery. Perhaps one should practice what one preaches. Regarding intended expert opinions and evidence, the defendant cannot shield herself from discovery obligations by citing restraints by the US Attorney's Office, or by now perhaps claiming to have independently God, my eyes are bad, retained ARCA for additional analysis and producing only a limited portion of expert discovery. The Commonwealth remains unduly prejudiced by the defendant's delays. Unduly prejudiced. Okay, so what is prejudicial about their testimony, Mr. Brennan? How does that prejudice? They are going to repeat pretty much what they said the last time, unless the defence has asked them to do any additional testing. The Commonwealth has diligently sought expert discovery from the defendant and US Attorney's Office for approximately 10 months. Oh dear. Well, how long have we been waiting for Sallyport videos? A second voir dire is not an appropriate remedy. Now you're telling the judge what to do. As the defendant has continued to sidestep their discovery obligations, the Commonwealth is entitled to a fair trial and simply has sought what every criminal defendant in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is obligated to produce. Right. Fair trial. Who's on trial here? The Commonwealth is entitled not to repeatedly be ambushed at trial. And be permitted to effectively prepare for cross-examination of any witness. Why don't you watch the previous trial, Mr. Brennan? Yeah. Now, you can't go at their credibility because they're impeccable. So this is what you do to try and exclude them. So the main people that, instead of bolstering your own strategy for the trial, you're basically just trying to weaken the defences. Is that a fair strategy? Is that a fair way to address a trial? You know, does that give the defendant a fair go? Isn't your job to present the evidence in a non-biased way and let the jury decide? That's just what I thought. So let's go on. Yes, they've been ambushed, the poor bubbers. The only appropriate remedy is exclusion. Well, look at that. How did you get to that? What about, didn't you mention sanctions earlier? I must say, though, he is a very, very good actor. He's a criminal defendant's constitutional right to call a witness on her behalf is not absolute and may be limited in the judge's discretion. Oh, now you're sucking up. In the face of legitimate demands of the adversarial system. Right. Okay. So signed the 11th of February this year. Okay. That's what we're talking about. Now, let's get back to what goes on here.
Just kidding. I should probably put it on the screen.
For $23,925. That's not trample. That's not trial by ambush. That's getting duped. So I didn't know any of this, but I've tried a few cases. I've been around the federal court a little bit.
Oh, you're just...
I know how it works.
I'm such a big boy. I've got so much experience and knowledge and power, and I've been around, okay? So you're a court slut. Is that what you're telling me? Let's go back and hear that again.
Personally. Okay.
Thanks, Peter.
We are back to Brennan, I think, for another minute or two before we get after Judge Canoe leaves.
In a half?
Just kidding. I should probably put it on the screen.
For $23,925.
Now, I will say, this is a bill, okay? It is a bill. It is not a payment. So the defence retains these experts from the federal government. Yeah? So they are the contact person to forward any bills to. Yeah? So it makes sense that that bill was sent to the defence team to then pass on to whomever was paying it.
That's not trample. That's not trial by ambush.
Now
That's getting duped.
let's stack some paper and fold some pins and close our folders to make sure that we pay attention and everyone notices exactly what I'm saying, because it's very, very important.
So I didn't know any of this, but
Oh,
I've tried a few cases.
oh,
I've been around the federal court a little bit.
mm-hmm.
I know how it works.
Oh, you got your big boy pants on.
And sometimes parties
tap,
pick
tap.
sides.
Yep.
It creates an imbalance and unfairness.
Wow.
And then it allows the ability of one side to use ghosts.
Use
And create
ghosts.
illusions and shields and say something's there and something's
Oh.
happening.
Illusions and shields. You mean like inverting videos? Maybe? Or altering timestamps? Yeah. Okay. No. No ghosts, Mr. Brennan. No ghosts. Only idiots. Like Proctor. Yeah. Why isn't the defense going after him? Why aren't they picking shit out of him? They don't need to. He's done it himself.
Federal investigation.
Sit down, sir.
This person, and then this happens. I don't care if the witnesses testify at trial. I don't care about their opinions, but I care that it's unfair, imbalanced,
Unfair.
and hidden.
It's unfair. I've got this white binder and it's so unfair.
The Commonwealth, like the defense, is entitled
Oh,
to
tap,
discovery.
tap.
So if they can produce the discovery, I'd welcome ARCA.
What was that? What? If they can produce the discovery, I'd welcome ARCA. Ooh, them's fighting words.
All right, I'm going to take a recess before the
And did you hear what he just said? First off,
Produce the discovery,
Yeah.
I'd welcome ARCA.
Just to make sure.
if they can produce the discovery, then I would welcome ARCA.
Mm.
That answers your question right there about whether late discovery should strike these witnesses, because it absolutely should not. By Hank Brennan's own words, if they can produce the discovery, so turn it all over now. Payments, whatever it is, he said, Judge, he admitted no prejudice right there. Turn it all over and let's go. Let's ride.
Brilliant.
That was one of the biggest lines of the entire hearing, in my opinion.
I agree.
They can produce the discovery. We welcome ARCA. So produce what you got, which it seems like that's exactly what the defense did, since in fact, the defense turned that stuff over, which again, all of this leads me to believe Hank Brennan fully believed that was from the feds, and his argument crumbles when he comes back because he admitted they produced the discovery. We welcome ARCA. All right. So the judge
Entitled to discovery. So if they can produce the discovery, I'd welcome ARCA. Entitled to discovery. So if they can produce the discovery, I'd welcome ARCA. Entitled to discovery. So if they can produce the discovery, I'd welcome ARCA.
should not. By Hank Brennan's own words, if they can produce the discovery, so turn it all over now. Payments, whatever it is, he said, Judge, he admitted no prejudice right there. Turn it all over and let's go. Let's ride. That was one of the biggest lines of the entire hearing, in my opinion.
So Bev's got a
They can
Nixon
produce
up
the
now.
discovery. We welcome ARCA. So produce what you got, which it seems like that's exactly what the defense did, since in fact, the defense turned that stuff over, which again,
I
all
might have
of this
repeated that
leads me
bit.
to believe Hank Brennan fully believed that was from the feds, and his argument crumbles when he comes back because he admitted they produced the discovery. We welcome ARCA. All right. So the judge leaves for like 30 minutes and then comes
Have
back,
a tanty.
and Hank Brennan provides some clarification for the court, we'll call it. Let's answer a couple questions. Why would the defense hide it in trial 1 and then just hand it over in trial 2? Why not just keep hiding it? I don't think the defense lied. I tend to agree. I also saw, I saw a bunch of posts like this, that there's a purchase order. DOJ paid the exact amount of the bill to ARCA on June of 2024.
did they?
I think it would be kind of hilarious, not hilarious, because again, this is very serious. And if she loses her lead defense attorney, totally unfair, shouldn't happen. But that would be the absolute worst egg on Hank Brennan's face ever if it turns
Wouldn't it?
out that this was paid by the DOJ. Then he has basically nothing to hang his hat on, especially because he said, if they produce the discovery, we
I welcome
welcome ARCA. They're not afraid. Don't you have to do billing even if pro bono? So everybody does a little bit differently. Some pro bono writes off the costs. Sometimes you can bill for it. I'm just telling you how lawyers usually are and how I always am. I would always disclose anything they ever paid to an expert because this is just not worth it. Peter, can you explain how mentioning FBI equals overly prejudicial? Of course, it's a bad fact for them, but the probative value seems higher. That would be like, let me switch it because I think you'll be able to see it. That would be like, in another case, them saying, every cop thinks the defendant's guilty. Every cop in our station thinks the defendant's guilty. doesn't actually prove anything, would be prejudicial, might be true, right? In this case, saying that the FBI hired them, the judge found, and I think there are arguments on both sides of this, by the way, just so you know. I think there are arguments on both sides, but I think the judge found that the fact that the FBI hired these experts, which you tell me what fact in the Karen Read case does it prove or disprove? What material fact? Bolstering the expert witness is not a material fact of the case. Okay? That's just my opinion on how I think the court came down. Could they pay the FBI directly and have it not discoverable? Oh, no, the FBI would not be down for that. Rebecca, how do we not know what the FBI was paid by the DOJ to look into the law enforcement in this case and how it was handled? We really don't know why they were involved. I mean, we don't know a ton about the federal investigation. You're absolutely right about that. Absolutely right about that. John, predictions for best and worst case scenario for both sides. I have an issue with the invoice, but how big of a deal is this in reality? Seems like everyone is overreacting. In my opinion,
You think?
if I was the judge, I would say, defense, you have to turn over everything you have with ARCA. And if we find out later that you didn't turn over everything right now that you have, you will be sanctioned and thrown off this case, potentially fined, et cetera, et cetera. Lay the hammer down as much as possible. Order them to do it. That's what I would say. That worst case scenario is she finds an intentional discovery violation and fraud on the court by Jackson, throws him off the case, sanctions him, strikes the ARCA experts. Sure. That's worst case scenario for Karen Read. I don't expect that to happen. I really don't expect that to happen. All right, here we go.
All right. So the Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern. The implications of that information may have profound effects on this defense and defense counsel.
So that is giving you the indication that she's either going to sanction him personally, make
that
him
a
pay some
veiled
kind of monetary
threat?
amount, or throw him off the case. That's what that sounds like if I was going to try to read between the lines of a judge's words.
So for that reason, I'm going to suspend today so that when we meet again to address these issues,
Such a
all
drama
affected
queen.
will be appropriately prepared. So I'll see you a week from today at 11 o'clock in the morning. You can tell me now if that is impossible for you.
My opinion, with this case, with the coming trial date, with all the lawyers involved, with the defendant's, life hanging in the balance,
Why delay it?
I don't think there was a reason to push it. I think you give the defense a chance to respond. We're lawyers. This motion has been filed, and we continue on and let them argue. And if they ask you for a week because we need to go get things, or you have questions that they cannot answer, they ask you for a week. In my opinion, there was absolutely no reason to end this hearing today. We're going to listen to Hank give his little timeline and what the lawyers say at the end.
Could this possibly be a little bit of a display for the public, perhaps, maybe, to sway some opinions? Perhaps for those people that don't actually delve into the details and check the dates and the chronological events and question everything that comes out of their mouth.
But I disagree with the short continuance. I think you should have let him respond and argue it today. And if they want to provide more documentation while you're taking it under advisement anyways, that's what should have happened, my opinion. I think this was an unnecessary delay.
Well, the delay gives those people who are not in favour of Karen Read ample time to spread all of their propaganda everywhere.
Mr. Brennan, where the federal authorities have been kind enough in the past to allow me to have copies of everything, would you be kind enough to call over there or check with whomever you were dealing with to see if I can in fact get a copy?
Oh, Mr. Brennan, you lifesaver, please help me. The federals have always given me access to their details. Can you be so kind as to make sure I get a copy of that? Yeah, so I've got my ducks in a row. Yeah.
Copy of everything that you just read?
I can, and there's a brief chronology I think Your Honor should be aware of.
There's what? There's a brief chronology that I think Your Honor should be aware of. What might that be?
If I could add that right now, it would take me less than a minute. The chronology is December 4th, we sent another tour request, 2024. January 6th, we filed our notice of intention to exclude ARCA experts.
Yeah.
January 30th, 2025, the United States Attorney's Office sent a response to both ours and the defense requests. Without any prompting, on February 6, 2025, the defense and the prosecution received an email from the U.S. Attorney's Office saying that the contract had ended with the ARCA experts and that if either party wanted to engage, the original materials are still protected. This was a change in position about whether a party could engage. On February 11th, we filed the motion to exclude. February 13th, the defense provided us the emails that I read. February 13th.
What? 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 Hold the phone. What was that? Can you repeat that for me, Mr. Brennan? Wasn't there a discovery violation?
February 11th, we filed the motion to exclude. February 13th, the defense provided us the emails that I read.
The
February 13th.
defense, not defense.
That was like a what's his name? Dave Chappelle. Gotcha. Not really. Right? That's tough. That's tough. But I will just tell you, I give him, you guys are gonna hate this. I give him credit for standing up there, taking the gut punch that he was just completely wrong about his, smoking gun moment, his Matlock moment. He was just completely wrong about it. He got up there, he corrected it. It should absolutely change the way everybody, including Judge Canoe, looks at this.
You think?
The fact that the defense turned it over and not the feds.
13, 2025. I think the defense provided us the emails that I read. February 13, 2025. I think I said the federal government. It was the defense.
Yeah.
February
You
13,
think you said?
2025.
You think you said. You think you said. Okay. Misrepresentation of the facts.
Sent us the emails and the direct examination outline.
Oh, the outline. The outline, the one that they were discussing in the emails? Yeah? Yeah?
You reach out to the federal government again because I was curious about the change in position on February 6th that the contract has ended.
Confusing.
But
It confused
that parties
you,
could contact
did it?
ARCA. Obviously, the Commonwealth is in no position to contact ARCA because that would naturally preclude the defense from retaining them. So we've refrained and we will not reach out to them.
All right, so the information that was provided to you, not from the federal government, I'd like a
No.
copy of before you leave.
Dickhead. Now let's go back to the testimony of the ARCA experts from the trial. Just to make sure there was nothing untoward.
Number two, because now they had to hire them as experts. Whatever, no big deal. Because the defense turned it over. So it's literally no big deal. All right, here we go.
Now,
Yes, you can
Thank
move
you.
on.
You've been qualified in other courts to testify as an expert in the area of accident reconstruction. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to pause it because each of these points is important. He didn't say 20 times. He didn't say 18. He didn't say 20. He just said, you've been an expert before. And he said, yes.
You were not hired by the defense in this case, correct?
That is correct.
At the time you did your expert review, Dr. Wolf, and your consultation, you and I had never met.
That's
No.
correct.
You did not know who I was.
No.
When,
all
so
done
first of all, he said you were not
before.
hired by the defense. That does not mean they didn't pay you anything, right? Just because you weren't hired by the defense is not the same thing as you didn't
That's
pay
true.
for anything. Additionally, he said, at the time you did your report.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not quotes. That's a parenthetical maybe. That is going to apply to the questions he's going to ask now. At the time you did your report. Let's remember that.
Before you even met.
Oh, no, you did not know who I was.
I did not.
You've never met Ms. Little.
No.
Mr. Unetti.
No.
Matter of fact, you've never heard of this case.
That's correct.
You were hired by another agency not connected in any way to the defense. Is that right?
Correct.
And not connected in any way to the Commonwealth. Is that right?
Correct.
So your analysis and your conclusions and your opinions are completely independent of the
Yeah.
defense and the Commonwealth in this case. Is that right?
Objection.
Sustained. Mr. Jackson, you can ask it differently.
When you did your analysis and conclusions, well, let me ask it this way. You finalized your report, you and your team, correct?
Correct.
That report is contained in a multi-page document that was submitted following your analysis and your opinions and conclusions, right?
Correct.
The defense didn't have anything to do with that, correct?
Correct.
You never met us, didn't know who we were when you did this.
Correct.
You'd never met Mr. Lally, didn't know who he was when you did this.
Correct.
So your analysis, opinions, testing, and conclusions were requested by a completely separate agency.
That is correct.
Goes without saying, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. You haven't been paid by the defense?
You have not paid us anything, no.
Up until that question, I was actually starting to sweat a little bit, if you want my honest opinion. I was like, hold on a second, because I swear he said you haven't been paid by anything by the defense, because all that stuff, you were not hired, you do not work for, you didn't do the report for, all of those are okay. If you paid the travel expenses, but you asked those questions in front of the jury, that's okay. But you have not been paid anything by the defense. Now, here's a new gray area, right? The new gray area is, at this time, and he's sitting there at trial, had they paid those travel expenses? And if the answer is no, that they did not pay the travel expenses at this time, then that could still be a true statement. Now, I didn't go pull every clip of everything Alan Jackson ever said from interviews to the courthouse steps. Amy said not paid yet, could be said. But I feel like I've heard him say it 1,000 times that they didn't pay ARCA anything. But if the point is, at the time he said this, that was true, and now they have paid $23,000 whatever dollars, then they have turned it over. It's part the Commonwealth could not have asked it in the first trial. Okay, so there is no prejudice. If they didn't pay him at this point, the Commonwealth could not get up and say, "Didn't you pay $23,900 or whatever it was? Didn't they pay this for your travel and expenses? What did they put you up in a nice hotel?" They couldn't ask any of those questions because they had not in fact paid that money. Timing matters. Words matters. Yep. Sakshi said, what if it was paid after the trial? That absolutely matters. Sarah said, I think she's trying her best to be impartial, but I'm convinced Judge Canoe despises Karen and Alan. I think Karen should have a new judge. Well, if only it were that easy. But I think she's trying to. I'll tell you where I think she misstepped at the end of when we get to the end of the hearing. I don't know if we're done with this. There's about another minute I want to listen to. There's another minute I want to listen to of the back and forth between Jackson and Wolf at the first trial.
And you don't work for us.
That's correct.
As a matter of fact, I've never asked you specific questions about your testing before today.
That is correct.
He didn't say we've never spoken before today, right? At the time of your report, you didn't know who I was. We had never met, never spoken. Fine. But now the question is, and again, you can call it smart, you can call it slimy. My guess is the two sides of this case are going to have two different S words for what you call this and what people think of lawyers, right? They hate lawyers till they need one. That's how this channel started. The original intro, John O'Rourke will remember that and probably agree with it. But he said, he changed. I never asked you specific questions about your testing.
It's about the outline.
Your work product, the report that you provided, was provided both to the defense as well as the Commonwealth. Is that right?
That's my understanding, yes.
And you were equally available to both sides?
In terms of them reaching out?
Correct.
Yes.
And I called you ultimately after receiving your report, asked if you join us and testify, correct?
That is correct.
Were you and your team asked to undertake a review for purposes of accident reconstruction of the case that's now pending before the court?
Yes, sir.
Was your team asked to do this by the agency that ultimately retained you, not us?
That's correct.
Who at ARCA was assigned to the team who would ultimately undertake this job of accident reconstruction?
It was myself, Dr. Andrew Rentschler, and Scott Klein.
What was Dr. Rentschler's role in this case, as it's distinguished from your role in the case?
Certainly. So Dr. Rentschler is a biomechanical engineer, and ultimately he assessed whether or not there was a mechanism for the injuries of Mr. John O'Keefe.
And what was your focus? If he's talking about the injuries to Mr. O'Keefe, what was your focus in your reconstruction and your analysis?
Hey there, thanks for stopping in. We hope you will join us again. We all look forward to next time. We got to talk about true crime. Hey there, thanks for stopping in. We hope you will join us again. We all look forward to next time. We got to talk about true crime. Clues. Justice served in an honest fight. True crime tales till the verdict's right. Solving more than just trivial quests, where sentences rule and the defense rests. Our true crime family is great. All types of topics we debate. Smash that like and ring that bell. Hit subscribe, you might as well.